Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. So the block editor in WordPress is a little over 5 years old, and yeah, I remember when it was first introduced, and well, everything that happened around it. So it's really crazy to think that it's, well, been here almost half a decade at this point. Still, that block editor can feel like a pretty mystic and challenging place if you're new to WordPress, or if you've just been using the classic editor for the past 5 years. While it is really powerful, it can be a bit tricky to get started using. So if you've been wanting to sort of take that dive into the block editor, but weren't really sure where to get started, well, you come to the right place. I've been working with it really since it was introduced back in like 2017, 2018, and I've really enjoyed using it, and now I would really love to help you get started using the block editor. So that's what we're going to do in today's video. It won't be a super detailed, here's every single little bit of knowledge with the block editor that you need to know. Instead, it'll be more of a high-level overview, but it'll be enough to help get you started. But before we get started, if you want to see more videos about WordPress, the block editor, the site editor, WordPress themes, WordPress plugins, WordPress blocks, how to develop blocks, web design, web development, any of that, if that excites you, then hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Now, let's get started. So first off, let's just take a step back and take a look at the block editor in general. The block editor started out really as the Gutenberg project back in 2017, 2018. 2018 is when it really started to ramp up development. And also one thing I do want to mention is you'll hear block editor and Gutenberg sort of thrown about interchangeably. And while that was sort of initially okay, they were both the same thing. What was going on in the Gutenberg plugin was basically the block editor. At this point, they are sort of different. The block editor is a part of the Gutenberg project, but the Gutenberg project is more than the block editor. It includes the site editor. We've got collaboration coming up in WordPress right now in 2024, and then hopefully internationalization coming up. So I just want to get that out of the way. You'll hear me say the block editor a lot more than Gutenberg for that reason. And basically the goal of the block editor was to create a better editor for creating post pages and other content than what we had with the what you see is what you get editor, which we had since WordPress started over 20 years ago. And it's very much trying to be a competitor of the Wix and Squarespaces out there. Now you could try to create layouts with the old editor, but you had to use a whole lot of shortcodes, or you had to go into the text editor version of it to edit the HTML and then add CSS, and it was just a mess. And it wasn't something that a typical user could use to create their own layouts. And that's really why we saw the rise of page builders like Elementor, Divi. So really the block editor was built to help standardize the page building experience. And that may or may not have actually done it so far, depending on who you ask. But overall, I think finally, it's been a success. It's definitely taken a long road to get to where it is today. And to be quite honest, had the block editor been as good as it is now, back when it was introduced in 2019, I don't think there would have been as much headache and just general frustration from the WordPress community. But all of that is in my opinion. Okay, so here we are in the block editor. And as you can see, I've already started sort of creating just a test page with just a few blocks. And so really, when you're in the block editor, everything is a block. This heading is a block. This paragraph is a block. This image is a block. You're building with blocks basically. That's how you build out your pages and your content and all of that. Let's first talk about some of the things you see when you have any block. And sort of the first thing here with this heading block that you notice is this toolbar, and this has got some different things we can do with the block. Since it's text, we can make it bold, italic, we can add a link. We have some more options here. And then we have some options of what we can do with the block. We can copy it, all of that. And this is what's called the toolbar. If you see this in any tutorials, that's what it's called. So if you see a tutorial referencing toolbar, this is what you're looking for. Now over here on this side of the page, this is what's called the inspector column. Now this kind of has two tabs you gotta be careful with. First is the page, and this is what was always on the right side of the editor with the old classic editor, where you could, obviously publish it, the settings, templates. If your theme for some reason allows for featured images, page attributes, all of that. That can be found under the page tab. And you also have the block tab. And this is probably where you'll spend most of your time when you're editing your blocks. And this does kind of change based on the block you're editing. As you'll see as we go through some of the different blocks. Generally there's like a settings tab sometimes, and then like a styles tab for the heading and the paragraph that's not there. But you'll see as we go along. But this is what's called the inspector column. So if you see that in tutorials, that's what it's meaning. Now, if you want to add a block, there are a couple ways you can add blocks actually. So first, you can come over here to the block inserter, and this opens up this column where you can search for blocks. You can also add patterns, which is almost a whole different video in and of itself. But you could add in whole patterns, which are groups of blocks that are created by themes and plugin developers. And you can also actually create your own now with WordPress. That'll be something we can talk about in a different video. You can also add in media that you have on your website. But anyway, you can add in different blocks, and there are a whole bunch of blocks, and there's even more depending on the plugins that you have on your website already. And you can just come down here, you can choose a block that you want to add. I think I'm going to start with the cover block, because this is a fun block. This basically allows you to add an image and then add text over it, or actually really any inner block. As you'll see here in a minute, you can upload, you can choose one from your media library. You can even use the featured image for the post or page or other content here, which is really, really cool. And something that you would probably use a lot more if you're in the site editor, which is another video. But for now, we're going to go to the media library. I'm going to select that image again. And we can add some text here. Or what I really actually like about it, I'm going to go up here. And actually, really first, let's go through some of the settings, because now we have some more settings here in the inspector. First, we can make it a fixed background or a repeated background. Fixed would just be like, you can see there, it scrolls with the page. Repeated background would be, depending just on how big this section ends up being, it would repeat once you got like to the bottom of the image, instead of stretching it out. And then you can pick the focal point you want. If the section were wider, it would slide over a little bit more. We just want that. We want that centered for now. And obviously, yes, you need to add in your alternative text, something like that. And then here, so that's the settings. Like I said before, this is the style. We can change, the overlay color. Can change what the text would be inside, and the same for if there's a heading. We can add in duotone filters. We can change the size of the text that's inside of there. Can also change the padding. Now, padding, if you're new to like CSS and web design, padding is the space between the border of the div, group, whatever, basically the border of this cover and what's inside of it. So if you want space between here and whatever the text is. That's what padding is. Margin is basically the space between the edge of this cover or group or div or whatever and other things around it, basically. So that's basically here and outwards. That's the quick and dirty overview of what padding and margin is. If you want, I can add links down below to the CSS box model, which is what this is all based off of. And then block spacing is the space between blocks inside of the cover block, as you'll see in a second. And then we can also set the minimum height. And then even down here, we have settings for border, radius, border, color, all of that down here. So now I really want to show you what I love about the cover block. You have options to how to align it. You can also change where the content position is. But for now, we're going to keep it centered. And you can even toggle sort of whether it's full height. But for now, we're going to actually make it full align. And then inside of it, I'm going to add in a columns block. And another really cool trick that I like when I'm in the block editor is if you hit the slash, and then that's how you can search for different blocks. So I can slash columns, and now I have columns, and now we're in the columns block, which is another really cool block and something you'll probably use a lot when you're here in the block editor and the site editor. So I like to make it white aligned, and then we have our options for how we want to start with the number of columns and how much or how wide each column is. So let's just go with something simple. You can always change the width of columns if you want. You can change the number of columns, but we're just going to start and we'll add in a heading block, and then we'll add in some text. And actually this will allow us, so I don't like how this is bold, so we can come in here, and where is typography? Yep. Appearance, and we want regular, like so. And then let's, for fun, just add in a button. Now, with buttons, it brings up another cool tool that we have with blocks, and that's style variations. Now, with buttons, this brings us to something else that's really cool with the block editor, another really cool tool that we now have, and that's block styles. So some of the blocks will have different styles that are available both through WordPress core as well as theme and plugin developers. The Crossroads framework has a number of different styles, for example, for the list block. For the button block, by default, we sort of have this fill and outline option, and sort of just toggles. If you do the outline, generally with most themes, you want to make sure that the text color is set to something that you can see. And then you just add your link in here, and you're good with the button, and you can make it, we also have the option, you can make it full, make it auto, just unselect that. We also can justify the items. We have a lot of options here, basically. All right, so let's see, what do we want to add in here? Let's look for another block. That would be nice. Let's try a pull quote for some reason. This is a block you would use if you want to highlight a quote from somebody else, or maybe you want to highlight something you wrote in your blog post that you want people to remember. So you would use this to highlight that. And you can obviously change the background, you can change the appearance. You can, let's see, let's add a border. Make it all, yeah, like that. You can add border radius like so. And then another cool thing with the column and columns block is that you can set the vertical alignment, or you can stretch it to fill. If we had another block, let's make that align in the middle. And then for the columns block itself, you can do that, and it would set that sort of middle line for the entire, for all columns, basically. And finally, just added another block. And then finally, let's just add in an image just because. So we want, let's see, just pick a random image like so. And that's sort of how you use the block editor. That's how you use the cover block to create a really cool section. We can add in, maybe I want like a little bit more or better padding up here, like so. And then finally, another block you'll use a lot is this group block. And group block also introduces block variations, which are basically, different well, obviously it's in the name. It's different variations on a block. So it's like the same type of block, but it's a little bit different. And group block is a great example for it because there is, the general group, but then there's also the row block and the stack block. And the row obviously makes things in a row. I like it a little bit more than I do trying to use the columns, and on some things, sort of like the header, just because it adds in a little bit more flexibility. Stack arranges the blocks vertically. I haven't really used stack a whole lot, but definitely used row a lot, especially for headers. So let's just add in a row, and we'll add in a block here. And then go out here, and then we can play around with our row now. Maybe we want to align that to the right or center, or add in space between. Really, you have a whole lot of options, and then you can switch between, you can transform it to a stack or back to a group, like so. And really, you just have like so many options around here. And again, with the group, you also have, the background. Make text white, like so. You can even add a background image now. You can, again, let's add some padding. Like that. Add in some margins. Maybe let's up the block spacing. Really, there's just so much in here. One of the things that I would highly, highly recommend that you do is you check out the WP Playground, and that's where you can load up an entire WordPress install right in your browser. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to fidget with local development environments. You can just load in a fresh WordPress install right there. You can go in and just mess around with the block editor. You can try things. You can mess up. And if you really screw things up, you just hit refresh. You got a brand new install. You can try it again. And I found that it's a great tool to really just use the block editor, because you can sit here, you can watch tutorials, you can watch me do things, you can watch other people do things. But really the best way to learn how to use the block editor is just to go out and use it. So I hope you found this helpful. So that is the WordPress block editor, kind of in a nutshell. What questions do you have about the block editor? Have you used the block editor so far, and what has your experience been? And if you've been using the block editor for a long time, how has your experience changed over the past 5 years that it's been around? Be sure to leave all those down in the comment section below. And if you want to see more videos about the WordPress block editor like this, the WordPress site editor, WordPress blocks, WordPress themes, plugins, WordPress development, web design and web development, or any of that, be sure to hit that subscribe button and to ring the bell for notifications. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.